fine line between decorating your house in a vintage style and having it just look like your grandmother's house. Maybe you live in your grandparents' house and you love the character that your grandparents preserved, but you also want it to feel chic and retro and not so much like their doilies on every surface. Listen up. Welcome back to Armchair Rearranging, where you send in pictures of your spaces and I give you design advice for free. And today we are looking at Kylie's living room. Kylie recently moved into this house and it belonged to her boyfriend's grandparents, and they were trying to figure out how to preserve the integrity of the house but also make it their own. So let's see what we're working with. Here's what Kylie's living room looks like, and here's another angle. Kylie said she wants to keep the wood paneling, which great choice, I definitely agree. She's open to embracing that like mid-century kind of 70s vibe. So the first thing I would do in this room is to swap out the ceiling fixture. It's dating the room. I would suggest one of those round paper, like rice paper shades. This is something that feels really modern, but at the same time is very appropriate to the time of this house. It's very 70s. And that will diffuse the light in the room, but also create a bit of a statement. Next thing I would do would be to swap out the rug. So the rug that's there looks a little bit small for the space. I would go as big as possible. Because the carpet looks like it's not really anything to write home about, there's nothing wrong with covering that baby yet. If you really want the 70s vibe, you could look into something that's like a shag rug, which I have in my basement. I love it. It is super cozy. Kids love it. Adults love it. It's so fun to lounge on. It's definitely a statement. And I would say that if you do go the shag route, go with like a traditional 70s color, like a burnt orange or like a mossy green, and that's just gonna add so much personality to the room. If you don't want to go the shag route, that's fine. I would suggest looking for something that's like lower pile. Actually, I would suggest maybe even the rug that I have in my living room, which is from Revival, and I have a code if you want to get 10% off of your order. But just something that's gonna add a lot of interest to this room, because the rug is just not doing much to further the vintage feel of this room. And then after your rug is in place, I would consider getting a different coffee table. It looks like you have an ottoman there right now, which is fine, but something that's like long and low and has those clean mid-century lines is going to really further the vibe of this room. Speaking of things that are not furthering the vibe of the room, that lazy boy, sorry girl. There are actually a lot of great recliners that look prettier, so I would look into something that's a little bit more streamlined. Also consider taking down the string lights, because while they're cute, I think they're more appropriate in an outdoor setting, and string lights inside just kind of give it like a dorm vibe. I'm sorry. I did the same thing in previous rooms, but rather than having string lights, I would encourage you to just scatter around a lot of little lamps and something that's going to give light from multiple sources. And also, if you have that like rice paper pendant shade, I would put it on a dimmer end so that can add some extra ambiance. I also don't know that the mirror behind the TV is doing much for me. One thing that I would suggest is to really focus on adding art to the room. I actually really like the idea of incorporating the TV into a gallery wall of sorts that makes the TV feel a little bit more intentional, and it's not like it's just an outlier in the room. You're creating a gallery wall, keep scale in mind. Scale is really important. And a gallery wall made of bigger and medium pieces with a few small ones scattered in to fill in the gaps is going to feel a lot more elevated than a bunch of like 8x10 prints. After swapping out the rug, maybe swapping out some different furniture, adding some art, adding some different lighting, especially overhead, I think you're in a great spot already. And from there, things can kind of fall into place. Maybe you would think about getting some different curtains that are more of a statement, like maybe you want velvet curtains like that can kind of extend past the window a little bit. Just really thinking about like what's gonna elevate this room and create a wow factor. So in conclusion, for anybody else who is also living in a grandparent chic house that you want to make a little bit more your own, I would be very cautious about sourcing true vintage pieces and not vintage inspired pieces. If you have a room like this and you just fill it with for example, things from Home Goods, it's just always going to feel like a little bit off. But if you really embrace the natural vibe of the room and you look at inspiration from like true inspiration from the 70s and like lean in that direction, it's going to feel much more authentic and like it has a vibe, and not like you're just kind of living with the backdrop of the wood paneling. Like, you want to embrace that. And I'm sorry to anybody who's a lazy boy lover out there, but that is the quickest way to make a room look like a grandparent lives there. I hope that was helpful, and if you want to send in your own spaces, you can email me at carlottacisternas@gmail.com, and I will try to take a look. Things have been a little bit crazy in my life lately, so thank you for your patience, and see you again soon.